You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Koku. Before we get into today's show, let's do the free business shout-out. Free business shout-out goes to Stephanie Renee's Salon, located at 1614 West Main Street in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The zip code there is 49006. You can reach Stephanie Renee's Salon at 269-459-6535. That's 269-459-6535. They're conveniently located inside Cali Beauty. Next up is amymarie.maven.com. That's AMYMARIE.MAYVENN.com. They also deal in natural hair care products. Their mission is to provide high-quality products with unparalleled shopping experience, world-class technology and hair care products, etc. You can find them at amymarie.maven.com. Next up is Melanated Conscious Society. You heard me talking to Kepra L on my podcast several weeks back. You could find them at www.melanatedconscioussociety.com. melanatedconscioussociety.com is a mentor Black community empowerment organization in Jacksonville, Florida. Make sure to follow them on all social media platforms. And if you have a skill or talent related to marketing, like social media marketing or graphics or whatever you can do, or reach out to them and offer your assistance. It's for a good cause. It's organizing for our people. Lastly, Glennae Davis on Twitter. She could be reached at GLENNAERN@gmail.com. I'll just read what she sent me. She said, "Hello, thanks for your reply. I'm Glennae Davis, an LA-based registered nurse, author of a critically acclaimed memoir, Yet Here I Stand, creator and chief nurse of Nave's Vision, a healthcare media empire where we provide the healthcare education and planning to bridge the gaps of knowledge between discriminated, disadvantaged people facing employment discrimination and the healthcare industry, resulting in having a strategic plan with the medical support they need to no longer be victimized, merchandised, or marginalized by the system." I currently have 2 products available for your listeners. Number 1 is the memoir, and number 2, a free health checklist. So guys, if you're listening, make sure reach out to Glennae Davis. Once again, her email address is GLENNAERN@gmail.com. That's been your free business shout out. I also want you to listen to this ad.
Greetings, Bitter Medicine supporters. It's Caramel Yogi, aka Tamika, the creator of Victorious Ones LLC, where we help single parents find peace and harmony through meditation and vinyasa yoga. Visit Caramel Yogi on IG or send an email to caramelyogi@gmail.com. CARAMELYOGI. We will help you stay on your path of peace and harmony.
Please support the sister on Instagram. Today's show, our last episode, we talked about how our people, black people, Africans worldwide, we need to take a more scientific approach to life in general and a more scientific approach to our problems. Today's show, I want to kind of build on that and speak about organizing once again, but I want to talk about how we need to take a business-minded approach to organizing. A while back, I did a show called Making of a Coon, and a lot of people actually liked that show. I'm not going to rethread over much of that show, but I will say that one of the things I want black people to start to understand is to not just get caught up in slogans and catchy phrases and terminology all the time. Like, not everything someone does, who's black with or towards a white person is cooning. We got to get off of that. It's like that whole thing where people say pause after someone says something that could be misconstrued as something, as a homosexual statement. I saw Jermaine Dupri talk about this on the Breakfast Club some time ago, and I agreed with him. You could be talking about, American football or something, and say, the team has to go first and long or something. And there'll be some low-energy ignoramus who shouts out, pause, pause. You know who does that a lot too? Dame Dash. Dame Dash does that too. Like, Dame, you're older than me, man. You're a big-ass grown man. Like, why are you talking like you're a child? Why are you doing that? And that's something black folks in general have to get off of. Yes, we are trendsetters, I get it. But not everything has to be done all the time and every time, right? But anyway, when I was talking about the show Making of a Coon, something I should have stressed if I didn't is that all coons are traitors. Make no mistake, but not all traitors aren't necessarily coons. Do you understand that? All coons are traitors, but not all traitors, not all black traitors are coons. Not all black traitors are doing it necessarily to suck up to white folks, or they're, the embodiment, the black embodiment of white thought. That's not the case all the time. The truth of the matter is we are all prone to varying degrees of being unhappy in our circumstances, right? Situational unhappiness. We're all prone to it because why? We're all human. And the added thing to that is all of us have self-interest. And self-interest motivates a lot of our desires. So, people are traitors or commit treason in the black community or just in general, right? In general, you could look at what causes people to be treasonous or to be traitors. And one of them is, people commit treason because they are deeply unhappy. People defect out of dissatisfaction, disillusionment, depression, defeat. That's a lot of D's, but throw some D's on them. But if you think of those words, because they're dissatisfied, they're disillusioned, they're depressed, they're defeated, a lot of the black community, the whole black community is really under those terms. We're under all of those terms. A lot of us are dissatisfied with the wretched life that these white folks are organizing for us, are perpetrating against us. A lot of us are disillusioned. A lot of us are depressed. PTSD is rampant. And we are a defeated people for now. So we respond to life crises in a certain way. You know, I'm going to bring up a white guy. Is he going to talk about a white guy on a black podcast? Yes, I am. Because I'm one of these guys, I look at everything. I read everything. I listen to everything because you get to understand not only yourself, but you get to understand your enemies when you listen to them talk. And if you go back in U.S. history, the greatest traitor in U.S. history was a white dude named Benedict Arnold. And people only talk about the fact that he was this huge traitor. I think he was during the time of George Washington, right? People always talk about the fact that he was this huge traitor, the biggest there ever was, until maybe Snowden a couple of years ago. But what no one ever discusses, which is downright interesting, is that Benedict Arnold, they don't discuss the reason for his betrayal. As I understand it, Benedict Arnold was a guy who should have been seen as a military hero, and he was dissatisfied that he wasn't recognized for his military heroics. During war, he lost a leg, which made him depressed because he wasn't able to live life physically the way he was living it before, on top of the fact that he was dissatisfied for not being recognized for his military heroics. So the thing that happened to him was that he felt that he was forced to act. And that being forced to act is really another way of saying self-interest. It's a lead up to saying that, he was forced to act in his own interest. And we see that in the black community. I talked about those guys like Jesse Lee Peterson and the Tommy Sotomayors and people of that low ilk. And I could look at a guy like Jesse Lee Peterson, and I'm not going to rehash the whole Making of a Coon podcast here, but I could look at a guy like Jesse Lee Peterson, and I could kind of read his situation. He was one of those black guys in high school and school no one really gave a shit about. Dudes probably teased him, light bullied him, and stuff like that. And, he made up his mind when his time comes, man. He's going to befriend white folks. And, of course, white folks like to have a token, limp-wristed Negro around. So he became that guy. And he thought that was genuine love. And then he started looking at blacks through the vision, or with the vision, of the white folks he was around, or the white folks he looked up to or loved, or whatever you want to call it. That's what made him a traitor, right? Depressed about the situation that he was in, disillusioned, dissatisfied with how he was treated, etc. And so he started working in his own self-interest. And the thing about self-interest is that we all have self-interest, right? But we all don't have honor. We all don't have loyalty. And that comes from your parents. In fact, when I did the Making of a Coon episode, Gunnar DeSeuss, who I've had on this podcast before discussing his film, The Raging Elephant, he later pointed out in the comment section on YouTube, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and leave comments when we post our episodes there. It helps a lot. Give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you decide. But interact with our YouTube page, please and thanks. And Gunnar DeSeuss pointed out in the comment section of that app that one of the coons I was discussing in it, whose name I can't remember, something Martin or Martin something, a young black guy. I think he was dating Tommy Lauren at some point as well. But that coon, Gunnar pointed out that guys like him, his father failed him. And I have to agree. You see, the thing about self-interest, like I said, is we all have self-interest, right? That's a human nature. But we all don't have loyalty. We all don't even have grace, right? And that comes from your parents instilling that in you. Certain traits that you have will come from your parents or come from the lack of parents or parental guidance. So a lot of these sellout types, they don't have the personal trait of loyalty. Now, when you take away loyalty and you keep self-interest, what do you think happens? A person looks out for themselves despite their group. The CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency in the United States, has a formula for traitors. And the formula goes something along the lines of you take the individual's psychology and you multiply it by their circumstances, right? And that will equal defection. So, however bad the circumstances are for the individual, will multiply, right, the outcome or will multiply the level of defection. Do you see what I'm saying? So you take an individual who's already pathetic, weak, limp-wristed, that type of thing, right? Who doesn't like black folks because he was teased or she was teased in school, this, that, and the other. Who listens to what Whitey says about black people and they accept it as true because, you know, it's from the mouth of a white person. Multiplied by those circumstances I mentioned, you know, being teased by black folks, being robbed by a black person, you know, ignoring the fact that you live in a black community, who's going to rob you? If there's anyone who's going to rob you, and again, we should cut that down too and strive for more black excellence, but if there's anyone who's going to mug you as a black person living in the United States, especially where you're segregated into black communities, and our black communities are mixed economic communities, meaning that your doctors, your lawyers, etc., your so-called professionals are living in the same areas with those who have less, who don't have much in terms of economics and education and opportunity, right? We're all piled together in the same areas. If anyone's going to mug you, it's going to be someone who looks like you. But these guys who have that I don't want to say the traitor gene, but I'm going to say it, but I don't want to give you guys the thinking that you're born that way or something like that. No, it's your circumstances, right? It's your self-interest. It's your lack of guidance, right? It's your parental guidance or what have you. It's those things. It's not something DNA or genetic. But when you put those things together, that's how we have traitors in the black community. And there's traitors in general, right? And then the next thing is the human condition, right? We all want recognition. We all want fame. Now, fame comes in various levels. We don't all necessarily want to be in Hollywood. We don't all necessarily want to be in the news, on the front page of the newspaper or in the news, but we all want to be viewed. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want our lives to be acknowledged. And so we all have the potential to betray for fame. Do you understand that? We all have the potential to betray for fame. And again, it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing. I'll give you an example. A guy comes to you and says, man, I just slept with Felicia and her sister, Rhonda, around the corner. But don't tell no one, eh? Guy tells you that and he walks away. Now you have this nugget, you have this hot potato in your hand. And you just want to pass that hot potato on to the next person because, and again, this is nothing grandiose. This won't make the news. This won't make Hollywood. But now you have this juicy tidbit, right? And you probably even told the guy who told you this that, nah, man, I ain't gonna tell no one. That's too gossipy, man. Then he tells you what it is, and it's like, damn, boy, when I go home, I tell him my brother. I gotta tell my uncle this one, man. What? That's a betrayal too. Small scale, but it's a betrayal. We all have that potential, and I'm sure if you're listening to this and you're a human, you've betrayed someone before. Let's be honest about it. There's big betrayals, there's colossal betrayals, and there's very minor, very small ones. We've all done it. As human beings, the human condition, we all can betray, and a lot of the betrayal sometimes is for some fame. Back in school days, you probably told the teacher who did it. Now you're in good with the teacher. You're famous with the teacher. You know, when I spoke about Benedict Arnold, and Benedict Arnold, like I said, was around the time of George Washington. Another white guy? Yeah, another white guy I'm talking about. And George Washington said of Benedict Arnold that something along the lines of traitors are a part of the growth of a nation. That's a given, right? And that during a revolution in particular, expect more than a few traitors. Okay, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that's essentially what he got across, and I agree. When you're nation building, there's gonna be traitors. And when you're nation building via a revolution, like in our case in the conscious community where there's black consciousness rising up, going from one level to the next, from a lower level to a higher, expect more traitors. The more black people you see awaken, expect more traitors. Why? Because the human condition, we all have betrayal within us, and these traitors, talking about the black community now, they're going to be famous amongst whitey. They're going to get the pat on the head, the pat on the back. They're going to be celebrated. So why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because once you understand that, you then have to question, again, once you understand that, you then have to question, are you creating enemies or traitors? Are you creating enemies or traitors? I'm going to take a station break here. On the other side, I'm going to talk about the idea of the black community and whether they create enemies or traitors. In particular, which is really the point of this episode today, I'm going to talk about how we need to be more business-minded in organizing. I'm going to talk about stuff I've learned as a business owner and as a former business student at one point. And I want you guys to stay tuned. I'll be back.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the pro-black perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions. Black people face one problem: the problem of ignorance. This is why those who opposed us stole us from our parents, disconnected us from our continent, and enforced on us illiteracy. But now the ignorance is self-inflicted. We send our children to their machines. We detach ourselves from our motherland, and we don't read meaningful literature. Consciousness is a series of stages. The sooner we get to one, the sooner we are ready for the higher. The pro-black compendium accelerates the beginner to the advanced and provides for the advanced an unparalleled breadth. This is the sort of book your enemies do not want you to read, but our ancestors would insist you read twice. Peace Seeker, this is Oni from the pro-black perspective, and we need power. Power will not be handed to us. We need to build power. But in order to build power, we need a power blueprint. You need to study the best blueprints available. You have Carthage. You have Wilson's. You have Williams. You have mine. Now, you'll have Cooks. Carlos A. Cooks was Garvey's best student, the greatest mind in the world from 1940 to 1966. Yes, the greatest. Yet Whitey doesn't want you to read his blueprint. Cook's blueprint isn't religious. Cook's isn't for integration. Cook's isn't for communism. Cook's isn't even for anti-blacks. Cook's blueprint is for Africa. And Cook's blueprint is the unknown blueprint that was the basis of black power as we know it today. When you say buy black, you're talking about Cooks. When you say black is beautiful, you're talking about Cooks. When you say Malcolm got something right, you're talking about Cooks. But Cook's blueprint was lost, and Whitey is hiding that blueprint behind a $1,000 paywall. He's hiding solutions from you, telling you you need to take out a small loan to get the information that can liberate you. Whitey does not want you to have solutions to your problems, but you need solutions. You need power. I will give you the Carlos A. Cooks Reader, valued over $1,000 at a 98% discount, $15. Send $15 to cash.me/$ABS-ONI with the subject Carlos and your email address, and I'll send you the ebook. We need power. You need blueprints. Start building today.
Greetings, family. This is Koku, host of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. In case you didn't know, we have an online book club called the Bitter Medicine Book Club. Every month, we will select a book to inspire the Bitter Medicine Podcast listening audience to read along together. At the end of the month, we will have a call-in show and book discussion. This is a great dynamic way for readers to not only enjoy a book, but also have others to bounce ideas off of. They say if you want to keep anything away from black people, put it in a book. Don't allow this to be true. Head over to bittermedicineblogs.com and subscribe to our newsletter for important updates. Do that today. Join our reading collective today and empower yourselves, your family, and your community. Peace and blessings.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Koku. Today we're discussing organizing, right? But we're discussing it in terms of taking a business approach to organizing. And I started off the discussion in the first segment talking about traitors and enemies. And there's a reason for it, because in business, you identify your enemies and your traitors, and you understand that there's a correlation between the two. What I learned is that in business, there is always the bad guy, the villain, the antagonist. In business, there is always the bad guy, the villain, the antagonist. He or she can be either inside your organization or on the outside. As a leader, though, and this is what I want you guys to pay attention to, as a leader, you want the bad guy, villain, antagonist, you want them to be outside of your company. But you can't just have them outside of the company. You need to point him or her out. You have to make it a public enemy number one type thing, and you have to point them out so that your business, your team, is unified in working against the villain, working against the enemy, working against the antagonist, which is really in business term, the competition. If you don't do that, what ends up happening is the bad guy will appear inside of your company, created by your own team. If you go back in your memory books, I did a episode on 1804, the Haitian Revolution, and how Haiti identified their enemies. You see, Haitians didn't play no games in that revolution. They identified that France, Europeans, white was the enemy. That's it. They identified who was their enemy, and it gave the people a solitary focus to defeat. And no one really talks about it in these clear ways, but that's how Haiti was able to defeat them. They had their public enemy number one, without a doubt. And then when they had traitors, they were able to point those people out as well. Traitors being the Africans who were Haitian, right? They were able to point out their enemies. Their team could focus on defeating the enemy, and anyone who did anything that was not in line with actions to defeat that enemy outside was a traitor. And that's what's done in business, especially corporate business. But see, black folks, we don't approach life in a scientific manner, and we don't approach life or organizing in terms of the pro-black community. We don't organize with a business kind of acumen at all. And we got to stop that now. If you're going to be an organizer, if you're going to organize any type of change, or positive change, or winning this war that's against us, you have to identify the bad guy. Okay? You have to identify the enemy. In the business world, the enemy is the bad guy. In the business world, the bad guy is whomever you're fighting against. Simple. Simple. Black folks want to talk about light-skinned versus dark-skinned and all this old nonsense. No. The enemy is the bad guy with whom we all are fighting against. In the business world, if you're fighting against an enemy for profit, then your enemy is your biggest competitor. If you're fighting against a bad guy, but not for profit, then your enemy is whatever injustice your organization is against. Racism, capitalism, blah, blah, blah. If you're religious, the bad guy who you're fighting against is Satan or Satan. And if you're black and religious, is he going to insult black religious people? Maybe. Anyway, if you're black and religious, your enemy sometimes is not just Satan, but your own people too. Your own struggle against oppression. In business, it's understood that you have to continually point out the bad guys. You're the number one enemy. If you don't do that, your team will create a villain within the organization. You guys understand that? If you don't constantly keep everyone focused and on task as who the enemy is, then your team will find a villain within itself, within your own organization. The reason why? Your team needs a villain to attack. Else, why are you in this? Why are you in business? Why do you have a team? Your whole point in business is to take down the opposition, take down the competitor. If you don't give them a competitor, if McDonald's doesn't give its team Burger King as their competitor, then what's the point? Your team needs a villain to attack. Always remember that. Without one, they will look amongst themselves for that villain. This is why you have to get organized. This is why you can't leave anything up to chance. This is why you cannot speak in these sweeping generalizations about blacks need to do. No. Yes, blacks need to do better and this, that, and the other, but why? Because of whom? You have to identify your enemy, and your enemy is white folks. Do you mean all white folks? Every last fucking one of them. Because that's a little sissy thing we like to do too. I'm not saying all whites are racist. I'm just saying that, no. Stop doing that dumb shit. Roseanne Barr, who was fired from the revival of her show, Roseanne, I think in this last few days here, did an interview somewhere, which is interesting that they still give this piece of shit a platform to speak, right? But not surprising, of course. But Roseanne Barr does an interview, and she says how all these black comedians reached out to her to tell her, basically they forgive her and stuff. And she said, and this was headline news. This was the headline, something along the lines of, blacks are some of the most forgiving people. That's because we don't know as a community, as a group, we're not organized. We don't know or have the balls, some of us, to point the finger and said, those white folks over there are my enemy. Dr. John Henry Clark used to always tell this story about the Roman wars with Carthage in North Africa, and how the Romans every day would greet each other saying, "Hello, Roman, Roman person. Today is the day we must defeat our enemies in Carthage," right? Or something along those lines. And you, on the other hand, don't get it. They greeted each other with that every day. But you, on the other hand, and I could assure you, there was no Romans saying, "Well, I don't know if all Carthaginians are bad. I mean, some of them are good." No. What are you doing? You have an enemy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no some enemy, a part enemy, a piece of enemy. You have a full number one enemy. Learn to point it out and stop being afraid to do so, because they aren't afraid to point at you as theirs. When that governor up in, I think it's Massachusetts or something like that, was talking about black folks named Lil D and all that stuff coming up there, selling drugs and getting their white women pregnant and stuff like that, he didn't take time to say, no, not all black folks, no. But you constantly do that shit. And because you haven't identified your enemy, you have those of you within your ranks who are finding the enemies within. And sometimes what we end up doing is we vilify folks who have been in the struggle, right? Because we haven't identified the real one true enemy. I was watching The Breakfast Club this week. I'm sure you guys saw it. Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish were on there. And they were addressing some remarks that Cat Williams made a week ago on a radio show, where Cat Williams ends up verbally and comedically destroying one of the hosts on the show. But before he got into the back and forth where he comedically and verbally destroyed the host, Cat Williams was doing something that he's been doing for years now, which is exposing the underbelly of Hollywood, especially where it comes to black folks. And when Cat Williams spoke about guys like Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish and this, that, and the other. And so Kevin Hart, Tiffany Haddish, who are friends of the host of The Breakfast Club, Charlamagne the God, DJ Envy, Angela Yee, right? So they gave them a platform. They're not having they're not having Cat Williams come up, right? But they gave them the platform and gave them almost an hour to talk about, to plug a new movie they have coming out, which looks like buffoonery, and to talk about what Cat Williams had said. And one of the things that caught me in that discussion was Kevin Hart talking about Cat Williams and saying how Cat Williams likes to point at the white man and stuff like that. And basically what Kevin Hart was doing was absolving Whitey from any wrongdoing. It's not about Whitey. Don't look at Whitey. So Kevin Hart is one of these assholes now, is a traitor. Long and short, Kevin Hart is a traitor, because any black folk who come out here and try to make it seem like it's not white folks doing it, it's really about economics and all this you're a traitor. Anyone who's trying to point you or steer you away from your number one enemy is a traitor. And what Kevin Hart does is, because you could see it in the comment section under the video, is now other black folks start to vilify Cat Williams. They're finding their villain now, because Kevin Hart is taking them away from looking at their number one enemy. So now they found their villain, and now it's Cat Williams now. And the Breakfast Club is complicit because they gave Kevin Hart the stage in which to do that. And the Breakfast Club, Charlamagne and those guys, they may talk about mayonnaise this and all that stuff, cracker. They're doing it in a joking way, right? Which their overlords can kind of appreciate, but they too try to steer people away from looking at whitey too. Let's be honest about that. Let's be real honest about that. In fact, like Malcolm X said, man, anytime you see white folks pushing a certain black figure up there like Charlemagne is, you got to really wonder about those guys. Charlemagne the God is one of the most skinning and grinning Negroes around white folks I've ever seen. Ever. And you got guys like Tommy Sotomayor out there, Jesse Lee Peterson, and others. Right? So we got to understand, man, you got to identify your enemy and you have to be steadfast in sticking to the identification. In business, it's understood that if you don't identify that enemy, the team will find villains within your organization, right? So if you don't identify the enemy outside of your organization, your team will start to identify villains within the organization, and instead of doing the work that they need to be doing, they'll be fighting the enemy inside, competing with one another, trying to get promotions, trying to get visibility, etc. You know where else we see this? Oh no, here it comes. We see it in the pro-black community with a guy in particular like Tariq Nasheed. Tariq Nasheed has had the most conscious beefs I've seen in my lifetime. As you guys know, I had Maj Touré on, and while I might not agree with everything Maj Touré said, I get where he's coming from. I'm not going to vilify the guy. I'm not going to fight him to try get my promotion, to try to get more visibility for me, to try hustle more black dollars out of the black community. I'm not going to do that. You know. I lost a lot of respect for Moise Watkins. I'm not going to sit up here and slander the man or dox the guy and bring out whatever thing he did back in. I'm not going to do that. But Tariq Nasheed does that on a regular basis. I'm pretty sure at this point, fans of Tariq are not fans of mine. Unless you're a fan of Tariq because he's an entertainer and he's entertaining, right? Using a pro-black backdrop, so to speak, right? You know. Umar Johnson has been in those conscious beefs. So I think, to his credit, I think he was more so pulled into a lot of that stuff, but he participated. At the end of the day, and folks were telling these guys these things too. Sultan Seti, Umar, Tariq, Umar, Boyce. People tell them in their comment sections on Instagram and YouTube and stuff like, yo, you guys are fighting amongst yourself when we have a real enemy out here. But you see, these guys, because they're not really focused, especially in the case of a Tariq Nasheed, because they're not really focused against our number one enemy, right? Because Tariq is out here trying to destroy his competitors or his perceived competitors. He's trying to make sure he has a larger slice of the pie, the economic pie within the black community. Wherever there's suffering, there's people willing to pay for healing. People will even pay for a placebo. And he knows that, right? So when you keep your eye on the number one enemy in business, right, and you identify who your number one enemy is with everyone on your team, you cut down on that team creating a villain. The team has its objective. It has its focus. You don't have time to find and create villains within your organization. And that's what we have to do when we're organizing against this system of white domination. We got to get rid of those traitors as well who start to make these scenes, these conscious beefs, and all this foolishness that we have going on. Because all they're doing is trying to get a promotion, trying to be more visible, right? Which is what a promotion is. Trying to get a bigger share of the perceived market, right? Basically hustling black folks. We have to understand this. So once you don't identify your enemy, once you leave it to the team now to find the villain on the team within, there's no stability. You're creating traitors, and if you're creating traitors, you're wasting time, you're wasting resources, money, energy, etc. inside your own organization. So inside the black community, there's a lot of waste. There's a lot of wasted time, wasted money, people donating to schools that aren't being built, people donating to documentaries for little to nothing in return, but making folks millionaires off of it. And just in general, wasted energy. So again, we need to be more scientific about life in general, but we need to be very business-like in organizing against the white folks who are organizing against us. So in our shows, I try to do solutions, and the solutions are simple. Like the Haitians did, you reveal your enemy. Display their unethical practices and their destructive results. We can find unethical practices by white folks easily. We could see their destructive results easily. So you have to reveal the enemy. The next thing you have to do is you have to name them. If you want to be a leader of an organization or just a leader within yourself, be a passionate leader and name your enemies. And name your traitors too. Which brings me to the third point. Call out traitors. You have a no-tolerance rule for traitors. Attacks on team members are not to be tolerated. To use the language of the youth right now, guys like Tariq Nasheed should have been canceled. Long time. Long time. Because he's a traitor. Umar Johnson should have been canceled. Moise Watkins, canceled. Canceled. No tolerance for clowns like that at all. And then lastly, I'm going to take a business term and put it out there, and it's a term called SITREP. SITREP stands for Situational Report. We need to be given status updates on critical areas of battle often, and this is what I try to do with this show. Only Tassay from the Pro-Black Perspective podcast, both of us on KWAZ radio. We try to give you situational reports or SITREPs all the time. Updates on the status of the critical areas of battle. Who's winning the battle? Who's winning the wars, etc. But above all else, who is the enemy? Who are the traitors? I touch on that a lot on this platform. We got to do it. And speaking of traitors, and speaking of enemies, we know who the enemy is, right? It's white folks. Don't add anything else to it. Don't take anything away from it. Our enemy is white folks. We know this. But when we're talking about are traitors, I want to talk about a few traitors really quickly. The number one traitor I want to talk about is one mayor, a former mayor, W.Wilson Good Sr. If you guys don't know who that is, this is a black man, I should say, who back in 1985, I believe it was, in Philadelphia, dropped the bomb on the MOVE organization. Now, the MOVE organization, a lot of people don't talk about it, were a nonviolent group. They were freedom fighters, nature lovers, right? They were black women, black men, black children. They were pro-black, and they were in Philadelphia, and they believed in arming themselves, but they were nonviolent, right? And here comes the first African-American mayor in Philadelphia history who bombs them, right? 11 lives were lost, men, women, and children, and many more homes and lives destroyed because of his decision. You know what they did in Philly the other day? He's like an 80-year-old man now. What they did the other day was they named a street or something after him, right? Yeah, they named the street, the 2400 block of North 59th Street was ceremonially renamed W.Wilson Goody Sr. Way in his honor. So they renamed the street. And as is the case, black folks who are conscious was not having it. I want to play a clip. I want you to listen to this clip. As a MOVE supporter, protest the street naming ceremony, right? And this so-called black man, Goody, in response says, "I refuse to be defined by one day in my life." This is what you call a traitor, but I want you to hear this.
We're morally compelled to remember those 11 people, those babies who need forensic scientists to identify their body parts. So if you had to have people come in and picking up body parts, how do you not be sensitive to that? It was a big mistake, but now you're piling on. You compounding it. We want and work on all these unresolved issues that led up to that bombing. But the first step is for that sign to be removed, to show good faith.
So we took to the bullhorn in that area. Wake them up. At first, Wilson Good know that the neighbors was coming to him about what the police was doing to us. But we ain't the kind to back down. So I'm saying, Rizzo in 78, he said that was the end of the MOVE organization. Wilson Good, they misused, because it's right to use people, but they misused that fool.
Recognize number 95. I call him number 95 because he was the 95th mayor of the city of Philadelphia, the first African-American mayor in the city's history. And we are proud of you. I want you to...
Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all for being here. I want to say that I respect those who are behind me. I respect their views. I know they have hurt and they have pain. I know that they are here because in America, we all have a right to protest. We all have a right to voice our opinion. But in America, the majority always rules. And to ever hurt anyone, that anything I've ever done intentionally, to ever bring harm to anyone, forgive me, Lord. Forgive me, Lord, for any thought I've ever had of anything that's evil against another. Forgive me, O Lord. So that as these people go back to their homes, guide, Lord, and protect them. Keep them safe, O Lord.
Has to show up every day. He has to show up for the parades. He has to show up for the protests. And that's what he did for 8 years straight. Not just on the good days, but the difficult days. And we respect his point in history.
You heard the whatless Negro who introduced him? That was him at the end talking about we respect him. No, we don't. He's a traitor. I think I called him Goody. His last name is Good. Right? Wilson Good is a fucking traitor. And we got to point that out every day. And not just until that old fucker dies, but even beyond. Let me read something he said at that same street renaming thing that MOVE supporters came and demonstrated at. He said, I will say boldly and clearly and directly, this is Wilson Good, I refuse to be defined by one day in my life. My body of work would recommend that I deserve this, he said, pointing at the street sign already installed at the corner saying it's an honor of those who voted for him in 1983 and 1984. Good said that he's hopeful that the protesters will be willing to sit down with him whenever and wherever they want. He better have police protection when they do. He goes on to say, it's time to stop beating up on each other, protesting each other. It's time for us to do the work to get something done, he said. I will not let them or anyone else define me as one day of my life. I refuse to do that. I'm prepared to walk over there to the protesters and join with them and tell them I am with you for anything positive you want to have happen in this city. I grieve for the children who died. I grieve for the adults who died. I grieve for those who went to prison unjustly. I am on their side in that regard, but I'm not going to let you follow me around and make me something I am not. Later on, he says, I was responsible, he says. I am going to man up for what happened on May 13, 1985, but you cannot hold me accountable for everything else that happened in this city. I am who I am. I am a child of God, and I cannot be anything else. And that's why I, Koku, had to do the War on God episode. That's why. That's one of the reasons why. This guy is a traitor. This guy is an absolute friggin' traitor. Now, what's his backstory? Not sure. Not sure what led him to being a traitor, but he damn sure did it for his own self-interest. I'm not sure what his parental guidance was, but he damn sure did it for his own self-interest. He damn sure didn't show any loyalty and still doesn't show any loyalty to black folks in Philly or anywhere else. He's a traitor. The next traitor, or traitors, I want to point out, as you guys know, we had both from Jean, the St. Lucian, living in Dallas, and a white female cop who, with one of the most pathetic stories I've ever heard, claims that she went to his apartment thinking it was her own, found the door ajar, and it's been proven that you can't leave those doors ajar. Thought that Botham was a intruder and shot him in the dark and killed him. Now, I talked about this in the last ep. I'm not going to get into it. I told you my theory on what it is, and the likelihood that my theory, although I strongly believe it's true, it probably never will come to light because the Dallas PD and Whitey in general, our number one enemy, they know that it's so friggin' ridiculous, you cannot let the public hear that. And that's the thing people don't understand about this white organization against black folks. They know that there's some things you just cannot do because it will awaken too many black folks, and you'll have a certain percentage of white folks who would say, you know, That is some bullshit. And that's how propaganda is. You cannot, you have to ensure that your future generations, if you want to protect hegemony, you have to make sure that the future generations can't and don't take issue with actions that you've made. So that's how you keep white domination going on for 400 years. You have to make it in a way where it becomes a part of culture, part of their culture, part of their understanding and upbringing, right? So that the folks, in at least not in large numbers, can question your actions. That's the only way it works. But who allowed this feeble, pathetic white woman to kill this black man in his apartment and get off on bail and not be fired and only facing a manslaughter charge? And on top of that, adding insult to the whole injury, went and got orders to go and search Botham Jean's apartment to find a little sprinkling of weed or something, right? Who allowed that to happen? Well, some traitors did. Dallas Police Chief Renee Hall, right, is a traitor. Plain and simple. The District Attorney Faith Johnson is a traitor. Plain and simple. They allowed all of this to happen. They've protected this white woman too. This white woman should have already lost her job. As a matter of fact, let me read a piece of an article here. The title is, this is from Essence. The title is Dallas Police Chief Claims She's Prohibited by Law from Firing Amber Geiger Over Killing of Botham Jean. Listen to this thing. The article starts, and the article is written by Brianna Edwards, by the way, and this is fair use. It says, there are many questions still surrounding the shooting death of Botham Jean at the Dallas, There are many questions still surrounding the shooting deaths of Botham Jean at the hands of Dallas police officer Amber Geiger, who claimed she mistook the 26-year-old for an intruder after mistakenly barging into his apartment. For instance, why has Geiger been charged with manslaughter instead of murder? How is she still technically a police officer and has not been fired from her job? The question of Geiger's employment was brought up Tuesday night at a town hall meeting at Paul Quinn College, where Chief Renee Hall took questions from the community surrounding the shooting. I cannot do that because there are both local, state, and federal laws that prohibit me from taking action, Hall claimed at the meeting, according to WFAA. There are civil service laws we have to adhere to. Which now leads to another question. What laws are those? It is unclear what laws Hall was referring to, though she promised to release copies of the said laws. But Justin Moore, a civil rights attorney who was on the panel at the meeting, voiced surprise over the chief's declaration. I was completely mystified, and I really didn't understand where it came from last night. It seemed like Chief Hall might not have been well informed on the law, Moore told the news station. And according to the Dallas Police Department general orders, it seems as if Hall could have used her own discretion to take the action she deemed unnecessary. The chief of police circumvent all formal disciplinary procedures to render an immediate decision when he or she deems it necessary to preserve the integrity of the department, the orders read, as cited by the news station. When an officer is under criminal investigation, an internal investigation is typically conducted. However, as chief, Hall technically can order that the internal investigation be expedited. Also, nothing has stopped other police chiefs across the state and even in Dallas from firing others while they are under criminal investigation. There is nothing that prevents a police chief from firing someone on the spot or at least launching an internal affairs investigation, Moore insisted. When asked about the laws, Chief Hall quoted the Dallas Police Department did not provide WFAA with any. However, the department did note the general order, adding, General Order 508 refers to the police chief's ability to circumvent the formal disciplinary procedures, not the investigative process. All that to say, Chief Hall, Renee Hall, is full of shit. And the fact that the attorney, the district attorney, Faith Johnson, has said nothing, also full of shit. They are protecting that white woman for killing that black man. Now, as a lot of you may know, those positions like district attorney and police chief, you are voted into those spots. You're voted into those spots. So what does a person seeking their own self-interest do who wants to be re-elected? They sweep the killing of an innocent black dude under the rug. These are traitors, okay? These are traitors. And I could go down the list of traitors in the black community, but I want to give one special shout out to a traitor. And this came up on our Facebook page, Bitter Medicine Show on Facebook. Special shout out to Serena Williams. Serena Williams, you might not want to face it. Serena Williams, guess what? She's a traitor too. That whole thing she had on the court with the Haitian Japanese female player, Osaka. If you go back and you look at that, Serena is talking about that judge was unfair to her because she was what? I can't hear you though. Because she was what? Because she was a woman? Interesting. And if you look at the video, you could tell Serena carefully chose her wording. She was quite aware that the cameras were zoomed in on her. And again, trust me, if you don't believe me, go back and look at the footage. She knew where the cameras were. You'd see her glance at the camera really quickly, and she pauses and says, it's because I'm a woman. No, Serena, it's because you're a black woman. Black being the operative word. Right after that meltdown, as they put it, the angry black woman thing, some cartoonist in Australia draws an image of Serena throwing a tantrum on the side, and he has her in classic white supremacist, white racist caricature mode, right? She looks huge, almost like a big gorilla. She's stamping on a broken tennis racket. In the background, there's a white lady with blonde hair talking to the judge. That's supposed to be Osaka, who's clearly a melanated person. She's of mixed heritage, Haitian and Japanese, but she grew up in a Haitian household, right? But they drew her like a little blonde chick in the background. Serena is this big, aping monster, just fuming and angry. I wonder if they drew it that way because she was a woman. They didn't. They drew it that way because she was black. And they drew the other girl who's clearly melanated. I'm not talking about passing for anything. She's clearly melanated. They drew her as a white woman. Very intentional. White blonde hair woman. Very intentional. And that's another thing. You black women with the blonde hair and all that, you need to stop that shit too. You need to stop it. But no, Serena, they didn't. He wasn't acting that way because, you were a woman. He was acting that way because you were black. A black woman who's been dominating tennis, probably one of the greatest sportsmen, much less tennis players, ever. But Serena, you are a traitor to your people. You abandoned your people. You went and married a white guy, and this was the contentious discussion on the Facebook page, again, at Bitter Medicine Show on Facebook. Folks were saying, and rightly so, Serena can choose whoever she wants to be with. That's absolutely correct. You could choose whoever you want to be with, but understand there's repercussions. When you choose a white guy to go be with and have children by, you've turned your back on your people. You've turned your back on your race. And from what I understand, the father wasn't there and stuff, so you really turned your back on your people. And your father is who has you where you are. Make no mistake about it. Serena and Venus's father has them where they are. It was a black man who did that. Not taking away from their talent, but he took them up out of this circumstances in Compton, of all places, in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s. He did that. Okay? And he was denied. And he has been denied ever since, especially since she got with the white boy. And there's people talking about, well, she was with Drake and Common. Drake and Common ain't shit. We don't give a fuck about Drake and Common. We don't care about those dudes. There's millions of black men out here. If Serena wanted a black man, she could have had a black man. She chose to go against her race. So, Serena, you get the shout out today for being a traitor as well. And that's how you have to do it, guys. You identify your enemy. Your enemy is whitey. Plain and simple. And within this paradigm, this war that we have going on, you have traitors in your ranks. Kevin Hart. Well, most black entertainers are traitors anyway. Right? But just to name some in recent news, Kevin Hart, Tiffany Haddish, Serena Williams, Wilson Good, who dropped the bomb on the MOVE organization, killing men, women, and children. And there's an interesting thing. Look this up. When they were dropping bombs and stuff on that commune in Philadelphia, on the MOVE organization, the smoke and the fire and stuff had members of the MOVE organization trying to get up out of there, right? They were trying to get out of the compound. You know what those crackers did? They shot at them more to make them have to go back into the commune, and that's when the bomb fell on them again, blew them up, and killed them. A black man did that shit. A black man made the order. A black man made the order. Recently, Pam Africa, who was a MOVE member who unjustly went to prison, got out after 40 years, just met her kid. He's a 40-year-old man, just met him the other day. I guess she was pregnant when she went in, right? Just met him, was able to hold him and touch him in the physical for the first time, right? She was at the protest, and she blamed, as I quote, dumb, ignorant nigger Wilson Good and the white supremacists for the lives lost. She goes on to say, you know what? I'm going to stop using the term supremacist, which I agree. She said, facing a line of police officers that separated the protesters from the event, there's nothing supreme about you motherfuckers. Terrorists. Ain't nothing supreme about any of you cowardly motherfuckers. And that's how you have to be. You have to have that same strength and that same mindset. They're organizing against you. They're not better than you. They're not over you. They are dominating you, but you could change that. Get organized. Take a business approach to your organizing by identifying your enemy. Once you identify that enemy, I'm talking about identifying that enemy to your babies on up. You will cut down on the traitors that arise in your ranks. And when they do arise, you point them out clearly and you get them up out of there. Frankly, a Tommy Sotomayor shouldn't even be here still. Jesse Lee Peterson shouldn't be here still. Tariq Nasheed should be canceled. Tell him to do stand-up or get the fuck out of here. He should be canceled. Umar, canceled. Moise, canceled. Another traitor I want to shout out to is a former Miss Universe from Trinidad. What's her name? Wendy Fitzwilliams, I think is her name. Gunnar DeSeuss, director of the Raging Elephant film. He sent me this just today, actually. And I want you to listen to what this former Miss Universe, black woman. I guess in Trinidad, they have some kind of like Trinidad's Next Top Model type show. And, you know what? I'll just play the clip and you could get a good listen for the kind of treachery our own folks perpetuate.
Well, hello. Hi. My dear, before we get into your photograph, this was also the week of the makeover. Darling.
So you already hear how the former Miss Universe is talking, right? Like a pure clown. But anyway, the premise of this, it seems like it's kind of like America's Next Top Model type thing, and she's like the Tyra Banks of the show, and she has two moist fellas next to her, and I guess what happened was they were about to do some photo shoot or whatever, and they had to get these, the contestants had to get these makeovers, and I want you to listen closely to what the former Miss Universe, who's Trinidadian, I want you to listen to what she tells this young black girl.
What was all of that at my salon? I need you to explain to me why you were so unbelievably naughty and unprofessional.
Please do not relax my hair because I've had it relaxed for 15 years and my brand is about embracing your natural beauty and empowerment of black people. I'm okay with texturizing my hair as long as my curls stay intact. You need to understand that my hair is my identity. People seek me out just because of my hair. So when you tamper with my hair, you're tampering with my brand. If they say that it needs to be relaxed, I will have to eliminate myself. I'm sorry, I can't do the chemicals. I really can't. Like, I literally rather leave today because I don't do the chemicals than put the chemicals in my hair and stay. Like, I'm really, really, really sorry, but I need to put my foot down. Through me growing out my natural hair, I started to love myself more. Like, I started to accept myself more. Y'all could have given me like the worst hairstyle ever with natural hair and I'd be so totally fine with it. This is way bigger than that.
Yes, I must apologize to you, judges. Previously, I had my hair straightened for 15 years. When I made the transition, I started to love myself more because we live in a world where the media tells us that we need to have the straight hair to be accepted.
I hear you. I accept what you're saying. I have also transitioned, like so many other women recently, and I understand your position from that perspective. However, as a young up-and-coming model, as a young up-and-coming attorney facing judges or senior counsel, as a young upcoming any professional, you have to be what? Professional. Shutting down my salon, creating that mayhem when there's so many other young women to get done and to look fabulous as well, is a loud non-starter. That's the kind of thing in the real world that gets you dismissed immediately. so that can happen again. Okay?
If they don't want to do the hairstyle, you have two choices. Either they do it or they go back home. There's no more.
At the end here, you see them putting the creamy crack in her hair and just lathering it up with this chemical burn. And then this is what the contestant comes back and says.
Wow. Are you kidding? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I look just like Wendy.
That's a good photograph. You are a very attractive young woman, but I want to see that attractiveness reflected in the attitude moving forward. Yep. Thank you, Gabby.
Oh boy. Special shout out for being a traitor to Wendy Fitzwilliams, or whatever her name is, former Miss Universe out of Trinidad. And shout out to the contestant who gave in. You should have taken your ass home. And that's what we have out here. And why is Wendy saying salon? Is she French? No, she's just an asshole. You sound stupid. You look dumb. But she's a person of influence who's telling this young black girl who's standing on something, at least for a time anyway, or who stood on something for a time. And here comes Wendy telling her, give that up. You want to be a lawyer, you want to be professional, you can't have African features. That's basically what Wendy told her. And I want someone to tell me where I'm lying. That's sellout behavior. That's a traitor. That's a traitor. Wendy's salon should be burned to the ground immediately. Her and the two moist Negroes she has next to her should be stomped out immediately. And someone needs to pull the young contestant and say, look, if you're going to sell out like that, if you're going to give in on something like that, what else are you going to give in on? You'll be out here prostituting next. These are traitors. That's our show for today. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please share, like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff that we do on social media. You do it for LeBron James. You do it for Serena Williams. Why not do it for me too? Share my content around. The more my content is shared by you to your social media pages, right? The more thumbs up you give me on YouTube, the more you spread the message that I'm trying to give out there, the more you do for this broadcast, the more you do for your own people. Okay? Talking about Serena Williams and Black Girl Magic, that's a waste of time. She's a traitor. You need to lift up those people who are not traitors and who are clearly and undeniably pointing out who the enemies of the black community is. Okay? So without further ado, guys, thanks for listening again. I will talk to you next time. Peace. But before I go, I want you to listen to this.
Greetings, family. In case you didn't know, the Bitter Medicine Podcast hosts an online book club. Every month, we will select a book to inspire the Bitter Medicine Podcast listening audience to read along together. At the end of the month, we will host a call-in show book discussion live on YouTube. This is a great dynamic way for readers to not only enjoy a book, but also have others to bounce ideas off of. It's been said that if you want to hide anything from Black people, put it in a book. Do not allow this to be true anymore. Head over to www.bittermedicineblogs.com and subscribe to our newsletter for important updates. Do that today. Join our reading collective today and empower yourselves, your family, and your community. Peace.
Yes, indeed. So we do have the Bitter Medicine Book Club that's been going pretty well. I know you've heard the book reviews that Carl Hezekiah and I have been doing at the end of each month or the beginning of the next month. We'll be doing one again in about 2 weeks for the current book. But we did select the book for the month of October, and that book is The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. And, you know, everyone's familiar with this book, and, you know, only to say from the pro-black perspective, when he saw that was the selection, he made a comment saying, you know, that's probably the book, right? The best book written in the 20th century. And I just want to say that, you know, it's a pleasure to be reading that book for the month of October. But I don't always, my vision for the book club is not to always read, you know, the classics. The classics should be read as foundation, but I also want to tackle books out there that a lot of people aren't familiar with because they're not familiar with the authors, but are just as critical. For example, one day we will tackle the Pro-Black Compendium written by Onitase. But right now, we want to build our membership so that when we get to that book, it's worthwhile for the author as well as for us. So if you know of others who should be read, other authors who are off the beaten path, right, who should be read, let me know. Comment under this video an author and their book title that should be read, and we will put that in the queue. Going forward, we'll get to it. I'll probably read it before I announce it just to make sure it's on the up and up. But make sure and do that. We want to expose people not just to reading, but to thought. And everyone has different thoughts, different approaches, different insight to some of the same problems that we have in the black community. And so, you know, we know John Henrik Clark, we know Amos Wilson, we know Chancellor Williams, we know Delaney, we know so many of these guys. Let's also read some of the other thinkers too, okay?
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.